Joining us now is National Security Advisor Mike Waltz. Thank you so much for being here, sir.
Thank you.
So yesterday, Mike, leaders from 25 countries convened on a call, and they concluded that Putin's statements this week showed that he is not serious about peace in Ukraine, but the Trump administration is still expressing cautious optimism. In fact, nobody has plainly stated that Putin rejected the U.S. ceasefire proposal. Take a listen here.
I think the question is, are we actually moving towards a ceasefire, or is this a delay tactic? I'm not going to answer that because I can't characterize that for you right now. I think we'll know sooner rather than later.
So it's been a few days now. What is the answer? Is this a delay tactic, or are we moving toward a ceasefire?
Well, Jackie, look at where we were just a few months ago, where we essentially had no prospect of peace. You're literally losing hundreds of thousands of people on the front lines, billions of dollars, and just a meat grinder of men and materiel. And you know, look, we've gone from that to, as the NATO Secretary General said in the Oval Office to President Trump this week, Mr. President, you've broken that logjam. You now have both sides not talking about if this war is going to end. We're negotiating how the war is going to end. And that's tremendous progress. In Saudi Arabia just this week, after I think what we would all agree was a very difficult and unfortunate Oval Office session with President Zelensky, we now have the Ukrainians saying, yes, we will agree to stop the fighting. You have President Putin saying, we will also look at a ceasefire, but there's some things we want to discuss. Meanwhile, we're talking to the Europeans. I had all of my counterparts, British, French, and German counterparts in Washington on Friday, and we are taking a hard look at what it's going to take to not only stop, have an immediate end to the fighting, but then broader issues like moving trade again on the Black Sea, stopping the aerial attacks on infrastructure, and then the broader deal and what components that will be to have a permanent end to this war. That's only in just a few months. It's going to be hard. It's going to be complex, but President Trump is driving the process forward.
Well, it sounds to me like the administration doesn't have the answer yet. It doesn't know whether Russia is delaying or not. The U.S. said the ball is in Russia's court. Is it still in Russia's court?
No, but Jackie, you did not. Look, you had President Putin go to a press conference before he sat down with Special Envoy Witkoff, and it was not a no. It was, here are some things, and we're going to talk about some things that they need to see, and they're very focused on how this whole thing ends.
Okay.
And we are very focused on making it permanent going forward, not this kind of fits and starts that we've seen in the past. So none of that was on the table under the last administration. It was just as long as it takes, as much as it takes, and this endless conflict that we don't see as in anyone's interest, and certainly not in the interest of global peace.
A European intelligence service uncovered a document that was prepared for the Kremlin the same week the president's team met with the Russians in Saudi Arabia. According to the Washington Post, it details much of what we've already seen play out, basically telling Russia how to stall while it continues to dismantle the Ukrainian state. It, quote, lays out ways in which Russia could boost its negotiating position by exacerbating tensions between the U.S. and both China and the European Union, by proposing U.S. access to Russian minerals, including territories it occupies in Ukraine. It also goes into how Putin should reject peacekeepers, propose demilitarized zones along the border. How do you know President Trump isn't being played right now by Putin?
Well, look, that's almost laughable. I'll take President Trump in dealing with the likes of Xi, of Kim Jong-un, with Putin and others. Certainly ahead of his predecessor. And really, as both President Putin and Zelensky said on our first call just a few weeks ago, only President Trump could drive this to an end. Mm-hmm. Only President Trump can bring this war look, Jackie, we know who we're dealing with. We know who we're dealing with on all sides. And we are going to engage in diplomacy. We are engaging in diplomacy, and that will involve both carrots and sticks to get both sides to the table, but to also resolve this in a way that is permanent and enduring.
Speaking of the carrots and sticks, the president has threatened sanctions. Are we going to see those this week?
Oh, I'm not going to get ahead of the president or those decisions, but he has put that out there on the table, and he has also put a broader and different bilateral relationship with Russia on the table. And so I think a fundamental question for the Russians, do they want to keep grinding forward? What's this situation going to look like as they lose massive amounts of men and material on this, essentially what is World War I style trench warfare at this point? Or do they want to evolve the relationship and get back to stability and growth for their economy and their people?
Okay.
That's what's the decision that's laying before them. But the process of engaging in diplomacy on both sides, I just find incredulous that the Trump administration is being criticized for when the alternative was endless war and endless death and destruction.
He punished Zelensky when they wouldn't agree to an unconditional ceasefire, withholding military aid and intelligence sharing. And a lot of people are asking, is the president going to punish Putin too?
All options are on the table, Jackie,
Okay.
absolutely. But I think that's a bit of a spin in the sense that President Zelensky had an opportunity to bind our economies together for the foreseeable future. The U.S. and Ukrainian people, in terms of growing the pie in their economy and their natural resources, and in a way that would completely redefine our assistance. That was an opportunity that was missed that day. But look at where we were after the Saudi talks this week.
Okay.
We've gotten both sides back to the table, and we're driving the other side as well.
I want to move to the airstrikes on Houthi targets in Yemen. Officials called this an opening salvo for the attacks on shipping in the Red Sea, but it followed the president reaching out to the Ayatollah, basically trying to restart talks on their nuclear program. Netanyahu's been pushing for the U.S. and Israel to do a joint operation on Iran's nuclear facilities, and the Ayatollah rejected the president's request for talks. Is that kind of a joint operation under consideration now?
Well, let's talk about the situation that we inherited in the Red Sea and the Suez Canal. We have not had a U.S. warship transit that area in over 4 months. We haven't had a U.S. flagged commercial vessel in over a year. 70% of global shipping has been diverted from two of the world's most strategic waterways, adding cost and complexity to global commerce. That's what we inherited. The president has decided that's completely unacceptable, but we're not going to do what the Biden administration did in terms of this kind of pinprick back and forth. We hit the Houthi leadership, killing several of their key leaders last night, their infrastructure, the missiles. This is essentially al-Qaeda with sophisticated Iranian-backed air defenses and anti-ship cruise missiles and drones that has intact the entire global economy.
Okay.
President Trump showed leadership, and we just hit them with overwhelming force and put Iran on notice that enough is enough with its backing of the terrorists and providing them the most sophisticated weapons that have attacked our warships dozens and dozens of times. All of that alongside an offer of diplomacy in terms of all options are on the table for their nuclear program.
We're out of time, but I want to get very quickly one last question. Israel, the U.S. rejected an offer from Hamas for what they called a disingenuous offer on hostage release. How long does Hamas have to release all remaining hostages before Israel resumes its campaign in Gaza?
Not long.
Okay.
That was a bogus offer. It was just another stab in the heart to those poor families. But I will say that the last administration, 15 months, could not get to a ceasefire. We now have 31 hostages that are alive because we did drive, again, both sides to the negotiating table and got those people out. President Trump's determined to get them all out. but Hamas cannot and will not be allowed to rule Gaza into the future.
We will keep watching for it. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, thank you so much for your time, sir. Always a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you.
Hey, it's Will Kane. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News channel on YouTube. It's the best way to get our latest interviews and highlights. And click to subscribe to the Will Kane podcast for full episodes right now.